What's going on, everyone? It's John here with City Park Rangers again, and today we have a special video for you. The first video we ever did on this channel was a deep dive covering all things about the Haunted Mansion, and today we're back to do that again with one of my favorite rides, Pirates of the Caribbean. But if you're new to the channel, welcome. Here we talk all things theme park and movie related, and without further ado, let's get into it. Kicking things off today, we're going to be looking at the ride's inception from concept to early Imagineering. We're going to look at the first iteration of the ride in Disneyland and then at its Disney World counterpart. And like we did with the Haunted Mansion, we'll also take a look at variants of the ride in other Disney parks around the world. And after we discuss the ride's history and modern updates, we're going to go through and highlight some of our favorite Pirates movies and what makes them so special. So sit back, relax, and remember, dead men tell no tales. So in the beginning, much like Haunted Mansion, Pirates was envisioned as a walkthrough attraction. Walt's original idea was for a walkthrough wax museum that existed under New Orleans Square in the late 1950s, and more specifically, the attraction would have featured close-up encounters with famous villains throughout history. But this was eventually narrowed down to just pirates. The goal became to transport guests to 18th century Caribbean islands and took a creative turn when Walt attached Imagineer Mark Davis to the project. After the success of It's a Small World, the walkthrough would end up morphing into a boat ride. Davis had a hand in crafting It's a Small World and was a bona fide Disney legend who joined Disney in 1935 as an apprentice animator on Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. He later moved on to story sketch and character design Bambi and Victory through Air Power. And over the years, he animated classic Disney features, including Cinderella and Alice in Wonderland. Davis would later transfer to Disney's design and development organization, which is known today as Walt Disney Imagineering. Davis used to draw comedic drawings of fictional pirates, and that stirred Walt's imagination and inspired many of the figures and dioramas that still exist in Pirates of the Caribbean today. I know that riding through the town and seeing all of the original animatronics is something I have to do anytime I'm at Magic Kingdom, no matter how long the wait is. The atmosphere is pure Disney, and part of pure Disney charm is the music that you get to enjoy through your voyage at sea. And after the storyboards and models were complete for the ride, Francis Xavier Atencio, or X as he was more affectionately known, wrote a script for Pirates. X worked closely with Walt as an assistant animator on Fantasia, and while he was not traditionally a writer, X's script for Pirates included his first attempt as a lyricist, which would famously go down as a classic. Yo-ho, a pirate's life for me. The lyrics would be accompanied by music from George Bruns, and Bruns's credits also include The Ballad of Davy Crockett and Love from Robin Hood. Now, we've detailed a little bit of the ride's history, but the stellar audio animatronics are the clear star of this show. In 1964, Walt would debut Mr. Lincoln at the World's Fair, which astounded attendees and sparked the Imagineers to capitalize on similar audio animatronics for Pirates of the Caribbean to give the ride a more three-dimensional storytelling. Even though Walt passed away in 1966, just 3 months and 11 days before the attraction opened, he had a significant hand in the creation of Pirates from beginning to end, and on March 18th, 1967, guests of Disneyland would set sail through the murky waters and enjoy all of the whimsy and magic that Walt and his Imagineers spent years developing and crafting. The ride has seen significant changes over the years, more on that later, but the soul of the attraction remains the same and is what keeps the ride feeling magical to this very day. So how does it work? Well, as Disney Imagineers prepped for the 1964 World Fair, they struggled to figure out how to maximize the throughput of the ride. But fortunately, several of them were working to solve this very problem. Eventually, they were able to realize a track-based system that gave them rails to ensure the riders would stay on course while also moving at an acceptable speed was the answer. The ride is unique in that it operates very similar to an Omnimover, however, the boats aren't connected at all to one another. So it's not a true Omnimover. What exactly do we mean by that? Glad you asked. We've broken the ride down into 8 different aspects to explore, so let's dive right into it. The first, boat design. The boats used in Pirates of the Caribbean are specially designed for this attraction. They are typically flat-bottom, wide vessels that can comfortably seat several visitors. This design allows for stability and safety as the boats navigate through the water channels. Speaking of water channels, that's actually our second point. If you've never been on Pirates before, you've probably picked up by now that the attraction is built around a network of water channels that wind through the different scenes and sets. These channels are carefully designed to create a controlled and smooth flow of water, ensuring that the boats move at a consistent pace, which is critical to ensure that guests arrive at each scene as the Imagineers intended. The water that fills the channels is relatively shallow to accommodate the boat's movement, which brings us to the next aspect of the ride's design: guided movement. As we mentioned earlier, the boats are guided along the water channels by an unseen rail system beneath the water's surface. This system maintains the boat's path and direction, ensuring that they follow the intended route through the attraction. Next, we've got water flow. The water in the channels is set in motion by pumps and other hydraulic systems. The controlled flow of water helps propel the boats forward and also aids in navigating the boats between different levels of the ride, such as going down slopes or moving through tunnels. This aspect of the ride is more noticeable in certain parts of the ride than others. Loading and unloading. Of course, the attraction uses a continuous loading and unloading system, which means that visitors can board and disembark from the boats while they are still in motion, much like an Omnimover. But this setup obviously differs from traditional Omnimovers due to it being a boat ride instead of a track. The boats typically slow down or momentarily stop at loading and unloading stations to allow visitors to embark or disembark safely. Speaking of safely, the next thing on our list is safety measures. And safety is a top priority in any theme park attraction, and Pirates of the Caribbean is no exception. The boats are designed with features to ensure visitor safety, such as low sides and handrails. The water channels are also carefully designed to prevent collisions and other hazards. The water channels facilitate smooth transitions between different scenes and sets. As the boats move from one scene to another, visitors are gradually immersed in new environments. This adds to the storytelling aspect of the attraction as the scenes unfold seamlessly during the boat ride. The entire ride system, including the movement of the boats, audio animatronics, special effects, and lighting, is centrally controlled by a sophisticated computer system which ensures that the various elements of the attraction work in harmony to provide a consistent and engaging experience for the visitors. And overall, the boat ride aspect of Pirates of the Caribbean is a carefully orchestrated combination of design, Imagineering, and storytelling. It allows visitors to explore the attraction's different scenes while providing a comfortable and enjoyable ride experience. Alright, so where are all the different rides and what are their key differences? In total, there are 5 versions of Pirates of the Caribbean. The Disneyland and Disney World versions of the ride are nearly identical. However, since the Disneyland version is the original and exists in New Orleans Square, it does feature New Orleans Bayou theming and an extra scene where the pirates get into a shootout in a cargo room filled with gunpowder. The Disney World version features theming centered around Puerto Rico instead. At the beginning of the Disney World version, a projected villain from the films is featured before the big drop, and instead of going through the center of the cargo room, Captain Jack is in a smaller treasure room on your left as the ride ends. Tokyo Disneyland's version of the ride is identical to the Disneyland version in every way except that it does feature the projected villain at the start of the ride, much like its Disney World counterpart. In 1992, Disneyland Paris opened its own version of the classic ride, which features a few key differences from the first 3. For starters, the ride's queue is an abandoned stone fort, and the ride features more palm trees and beach scenes than any other versions, making it feel more open. It also begins with a shipwreck instead of beginning in the caves, which transitions to the prisoners begging the dog for the key before the first drop. Overall, the theming on this one is quite unique and it's tons of fun. And now for the biggest departure. Pirates of the Caribbean Battle for the Sunken Treasure exists only in Disneyland Shanghai, and it's wildly different from all other versions of the ride. This is clearly a take on the classic ride for the modern age, featuring advanced audio animatronics, insanely cool projected ride scenes, and a story that is much more integrated with the films. This version of the ride opened in 2016 and is easily the most impressive and advanced version. However, does that mean it's also the best version? Well, of course that's up to the rider. And for your convenience, in the description of this video, I'll link ride-throughs for each version of the ride so that you can view each of them at your leisure and check them out for yourself. And finally, we arrive at the films. Pirates of the Caribbean started with Curse of the Black Pearl in 2003, followed up by 2006's Dead Man's Chest, and in 2007, they brought us at World's End. 2011 gave us On Stranger Tides, and in 2017, we received Dead Men Tell No Tales. All right, so now that we're talking about the Pirates movies themselves, I think it's worth noting that they hold a special place in my heart, at least the first couple do, because the very first movie is the first PG-13 movie that I was able to go see in theaters, which at the time was a big deal for me. I can remember going with my dad that fall or summer, whenever it came out, I can't remember exactly when it was, and sitting in the theater going, oh man, I'm going to see a PG-13 movie. This is freaking crazy. It was the first of many, but obviously for a kid that's like 8 years old, that's kind of a monumental moment. I remember the year prior to that, I actually was extremely disappointed because I wanted to go see Spider-Man in theaters, and there was too much language or blood or something like that, and my parents thought that I wasn't quite ready for it. Spider-Man being my favorite character, that decimated me. But for whatever reason, this is the one that they were like, you know what? Yeah, this one's okay. And I'm forever grateful for it. It cemented in me a love for cinema that obviously still exists to this day. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making videos about it. With that, I want to just talk about mostly the first two movies, and I'll touch on the other ones just a little bit. Curse of the Black Pearl is one of those movies that changes the game a little bit. I mentioned before in our Haunted Mansion deep dive that Pirates and the Haunted Mansion actually came out in the same year, and Pirates did infinitely better than Haunted Mansion did. A lot of that probably has to do with the fact that it was a Jerry Bruckheimer produced movie, and it had a big budget behind it and lots of really cool action set pieces and very, very good use of CG for its time. And all of that compounds into a movie that's also carried on the backs of Keira Knightley, Orlando Bloom, and Johnny Depp. And that's not to say that Captain Barbossa isn't also a standout performance or that the other pirates aren't fun enough in their own ways, but it's one of those weird lightning in a bottle moments where you create a film based on a theme park ride and it does gangbusters. And a few years later, we got Dead Man's Chest. That film expounded on the lore a little bit more behind Pirates and really gave more credence into it being a viable film franchise for Disney. Davy Jones, especially for the time, the CG and VFX that went into crafting his ship, his character design, and all of the crewmates is something that is special still to this day, and I would argue still holds up. It's also one of those stories that at the end, you kind of had one of those what in the world moments because Captain Jack gets eaten by the Kraken, and it's like, where do we go from here? No one wants to see Captain Jack die. And for me, it's one of those things where you sort of have a very poignant end to the franchise there, or you could have. But instead, we went on and did Stranger Tides, which was a fine film in its own right. I remember even back in the day feeling like that movie was extremely long, and it is long. Let me double check how long it is. Hang on. Okay, yeah, so at World's End clocks in at 2 hours and 49 minutes, which is definitely long, and I remember feeling like it was long back in the day. I also have a very vivid memory of that being one of the first films that I ever fell asleep in. 2011's On Stranger Tides is a film that felt a little out of place after the first three. It felt like a beginning of a new era for the franchise, but not necessarily in a great way. I don't love this movie. And it's not for any particular reason outside of the fact that maybe I'm just nostalgic for Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom and miss seeing them kind of throughout the movie. At the end of the day, it's one of those things where it is one of the first films that felt like, okay, we're just milking this franchise at this point. But then in 2017, we got Dead Men Tell No Tales, and that one was a bit of a return to form. It's still not as good as the first two, but I do actually remember thinking back when I saw that one, and it's been a minute since I've watched it, that I actually enjoyed that one more than I liked at World's End, and definitely more than I liked on Stranger Tides. So I don't know, it's one of those franchises that is definitely a mixed bag, but the first two entries are incredibly solid. And obviously we had all the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard stuff, and Disney dropped them, and now they're maybe not dropped them based on what rumors you listen to or whatever. Who really knows at the end of the day what they're going to end up doing? I do feel like Pirates is a franchise that they're probably not going to let go of. They're going to make some more movies about it in some amount of time. Who knows how long it'll be? I think the biggest takeaway from this video that I'd like to leave you with is that Pirates is an iconic ride. It has rich history behind it, with Walt Disney himself being involved, and it's evolved into something that is endearing in most fans' hearts even today. So I want to hear from you. What's your favorite version of this ride? If you live in the States, have you been on the Disneyland and Disney World versions? Do you have a preference? I always hear that the Disneyland version is better. And if you've been on other versions around the world, let me know what you think about those as well. They seemed very cool to me when I was putting this video together, and I'm excited to go and try them one day. Also, tell me what your favorite Pirates movie is. Is it Black Pearl? Is it Dead Man's Chest? Is it On Stranger Tides, you freaking weirdo? I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments. And before you go, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see other videos like it, please hit like, subscribe, comment, share the video. All those things help a ton. Thanks for watching this video. Keep the magic alive.